Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We've got a big show this week with 3 new films to review, with 2 playing in theaters and 1 that we continue our 2024 Movie Wire cleanup. This week on the show, Y'all Need a Pilot. Marc Wahlberg goes bald for no apparent reason in Flight Risk. Part dog, part man, all hero in the new animated film, Dogman. And finally, another film in the 2024 Movie Wire cleanup is a 3-time Oscar nominee for Best Original Song, Best Actor, and Best Adapted Screenplay is Sing Sing. We've got a lot to cover this week, so let's jump right in. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch, a roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire podcast. You need people like me.
The Wire.
And here we go.
A pilot transports an air marshal accompanying a fugitive to trial. As they come across the Alaskan wilderness, tensions soar and trust is tested, as not everyone on board is who they seem to be in Flight Risk.
Deputy Harris? Daryl Booth. Hope you like flying. I never flew a fugitive before.
Government witness, not a fugitive.
Ready to go?
Is it always this bumpy?
You get used to it. Moretti is very disappointed in you, and he wants you dead.
Oh, shit.
Mayday, mayday. We've been compromised. Tell me how to fly this thing.
Pay attention. That's the good part.
Damn it!
I'm gonna enjoy this. You ever see a face turn this color before? Huh? I'm gonna tear you apart. Y'all need a pilot?
Now, let's get one thing straight. Flight Risk is not a movie. It's a 90-minute long cinematic panic attack, a chaotic jumble of bad decisions, worse dialogue, and a plot so nonsensical that it feels like it was written by a sleep-deprived intern who never actually has been on an airplane. Written by someone who clearly thinks suspense means shaking the camera violently and yelling surprise every 5 fucking minutes. Flight Risk is the kind of movie that makes you question your taste in movies. Or even if you like Flight Risk, it may be because you have seen this one time and time again, over and over again when it comes to thrillers on airplanes. How many dramas, how many comedies do we see in airplanes? It always has to go to a thriller, and it's always a repetitive formula. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't seen airplanes in dramas or comedies, but the airplane setting is usually made in thrillers. This is a movie that suffers from a lot of issues besides the recycled material that we can piece together from multiple movies like Turbulence 1 through 3, Red Eye, Flight Plan, Passenger 57, Airport, Con Air, and even Air Force One. We have seen all this before, but never so simplistic and so elementary, so lazy, that it just completely lost my interest within the first 30 minutes. Now, after watching Flight Risk, I sat down to write this review, and as I stared at the screen, the movie's name escaped my mind. A movie so generic it made my mind numb to remembering even the mere title of this film. As I recalled events of the film, scenes that at times I did like and some that are just recycled from other movies, my mind would always go back to one thing: a balding Marc Wahlberg. And I would ask myself the question I asked myself even during the viewing of Flight Risk, which was, who in the fuck decided it was a good idea to design Marc Wahlberg's character to be balding? It doesn't matter if a certain scene was good. The character design was outright distracting. That every time Wahlberg's hat would come off in the movie, I would give a little giggle or a chuckle on screen because it was that amusing, because that was the most interesting piece of this film, is the baldness of Marc Wahlberg. It took away from anything happening on screen, where every time Marc Wahlberg took off his hat, it reminded me of that scene in Austin Powers and Goldmember where Michael Myers first saw the gigantic mole on Fred Savage's face.
I said mole.
Stop.
Bye. Mole. Mole. Mole.
Oh, shut up! Mole, 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 mole.
Flight Risk stars Michelle Dockery as Madeline, an air marshal assigned to transport Winston, played by Topher Grace, to Seattle to testify against a powerful gangster. This is where Madeline and Winston encounter who they think is their trusted pilot, Daryl, played by Mark Wahlberg. But our two passengers soon find out that Daryl is not there to get them to Seattle safely. Our new writer in his first theatrical film, Jared Rosenberg, keeps the dialogue simple, and that also keeps the thrills simple and predictable, especially in a film that's trying to run itself into one setting for most of the runtime. We get introduced to the conflict early in the film, and too early in my opinion, where the simple dialogue and the attempt at thrills has to really carry this movie in a small, plain setting. And this is where we see the main struggle. It goes to a predictable formula. There's a struggle, we get a sigh of relief, Wahlberg's character gets knocked out, he comes back to begin another struggle, and repeat for the entire runtime. There is no build of tension or chemistry between these characters. There's as much value as watching a choreographed dance scene in slow motion. The performances in Flight Risk range from phoning it in to unintentionally trying to sabotage the film. Mark Wahlberg delivers every single line with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. Topher Grace's performance here is, well, every fucking performance he's ever played. Though, to be fair, the script gives absolutely nothing to work with. The script is so elementary and so recycled of originality that even Meryl Streep couldn't salvage it. With this recognizable cast, such as Wahlberg and Topher Grace, there is nothing here unique. Wahlberg plays his tough guy routine, only bald. Topher Grace delivers yet another sarcastic character portrayal that we see him in every freaking movie he is in. This man never changes his perception of a character. These two don't do anything to elevate the dialogue or the characters. But then we have Michelle Dockery, who we can see makes an attempt to do something with the dialogue, but the dialogue is so simple and elementary and again recycled that when she does try to do something with it, it feels like Wahlberg's gimmick bald head idea. It's over the top and artificial. I can appreciate Dockery's attempt to do something with the material, but it comes across as a made-for-TV movie. Now, this is where I was surprised, is that Flight Risk was directed by Mel Gibson, who has shown that he has skills in the director's seat. But with movies like The Man Without a Face, Braveheart, Apocalypto, and Hacksaw Ridge, these are big movies with big production values. Gibson shows his weakness here, where we can tell he struggles with one-set productions and his character direction in a movie that always has up-close shots. Alongside that, with a script after reading, he must have known that this was going to take some character direction to make this material fresh. But he really doesn't do anything with it. It feels amateur, like I was seeing a first-time director. Gibson is out of his comfort zone here. In a way, I think Gibson banked and put heavy trust on the star power and the talent and the credibility of the cast. And that just doesn't work with this material or this movie. Even at times, some of the writing just doesn't make sense. It creates more questions than answers. For example, is anybody tracking this fucking plane with this high-profile witness? Why are there random fighter jets there? Does the radio just work when it's good for the story? The movie has a laundry list of questions, and I think this is where the movie did frustrate me, is that Flight Risk had no flight plan. We can feel the filmmakers shooting from the hip on how to make this movie work, but it never takes off and it has a rocky landing with nothing but turbulence in between. Flight Risk's intent is not to trying to break new ground, but just to purely entertain. I get that, and I can accept that. But when you start adding in obvious things to help move this plot along, move this plot together, audiences are smarter than that to recognize that we are just watching a cinematic thrill ride dartboard, where the filmmakers are just throwing things at the board hoping for a bullseye of entertainment. But what we get is a neutered, recycled, up-in-the-air thriller that we have seen over and over again when it comes to plane thrillers. For some, this will be a good movie to just turn your brain off. But so was every fucking movie that came before it. But at least Wahlberg's bald head kept my attention, just not in the way it was intended. I'm giving Flight Risk 2 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now.
Now available on video cassette.
When the Moon is Full, the legend comes alive in Wolfman in a completely neutered remake receiving 2 stars. Find the Way in Moana 2 that never really did find its way to make a memorable movie receiving 2 stars. Sex Power, awkward looks, and more sex in Baby Girl that plays like a sexual fantasy, but in reality made me roll over after I was done and just fall asleep, receiving 2.5 stars. Succumb to Darkness and Nosferatu that Robert Eggers flexes his muscles for a remake that was made just for him, receiving 3.5 stars. Feel it all! Speed, power, action, chaos, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 that speeds its way to be the best of the franchise, receiving 3 stars. A flood, a cat, a boat full of animals that team up despite their differences in one of the best animated films of the year, and now an Academy Award nominee for Best Animated Picture is Flow that received 3.5 stars. Villains aren't born, they're made. His hunt begins in Kraven the Hunter, which received 1 star, which actually sounds more like a Sony Pictures tagline. So let's try this again. Sony wasn't born, it was made, and they made a shitty movie, so let the internet hunt begin. Everyone deserves the chance to fly in the book to Broadway to the big screen adaptation of Wicked, which brought down the house with nobody underneath it, receiving 3.5 stars. What We Do in Life Echoes Eternity and Gladiator 2, which felt like an eternity to just get through, receiving 2 stars. And finally, on New Year's Eve 1999, the Y2K bug changed the world forever in Y2K, which felt like the movie was more of an inconvenience than what actually happened during Y2K. You can check out those reviews of my previous episodes, and while you do, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe, and please don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out one of the podcasts that are part of my weekly listening routine. They had some sugar and some spice talking about baking and murders in the Sugar-Coated Murder Podcast. The link to that show will be in the description of this episode. But let's hear from Karen and Ann over the Sugar-Coated Murder Podcast now.
Hey, Ann Barner.
Hey, Karen Beatty.
We need a promo. You know, like where we talk about what we do on our podcast.
On our Sugar-Coated Murder Podcast? Like how we love to bake and talk about murder?
That's what we need to talk about.
There you go.
I think we've talked about it. Y'all find us on all your favorite listening apps.
Stay sweet.
And don't murder.
Because if you kill people,
we will talk about you.
Super fly, super good, shoulda, coulda, knew I was.
Based on the children's tale written by Dave Pickley of Dogman, half dog, half man. He is sworn to protect and serve as he doggedly pursues the feline supervillain, Petey the Cat, in Dogman.
When the streets are held hostage.
Run! Break the dog! Hit the siren! Ow!
2 of the the city's finest must come together.
Green, red, green? Wait, aren't dogs colorblind?
And fight as one.
What if we sew the dog's head onto the man's body?
Great idea!
Make it, do it, makes us Dogman! This super cop made friends, solves crimes, and even plays piano for the old folks.
Enough about this dog man. It's time to stop this super cop. He's not going to ruin my evil plans to destroy all do-gooders.
How evil can one cat be?
Pretty evil. Ha ha ha!
Dogman, listen up. You're the only one that can stop him. With all your kung fu skills and your canine fortitude or whatnot. No time to waste. Cut it out. Stop it. Will you get out of here? Go and arrest Petey, and I don't care if it takes a montage.
Buckle up!
Dogman, you only have one job to do. Keep your eyes on those monitors. So if somebody breaks out your favorite chew toy and waves it around, you look at the monitors. And if somebody just happens to have an Eastern gray squirrel, you look at the monitor. Why do you always gotta lick the inside of my mouth?
Now, I have often criticized hyperactive animated films that make me feel like I'm going to have a stroke while watching. Now comes Dogman, that is as hyperactive as they come. So hyperactive that I felt this hour and 29-minute movie was 3 hours long. The movie was so quick, so hyperactive, it felt like time stood still. This was the longest 89-minute movie I have ever seen. If they made an animated movie about strobe lights, this would be the closest movie as they come. Now, I am well versed in Dogman. I actually enjoyed reading the Dogman books, or comics if you will, to my kids. They were simplistic, goofy fun, targeted mainly for kids. And this is where I'm going to have a love-hate relationship with this movie. As I was walking out of the film, I tried to think of movies based on TV, books, or even action figures that made me excited to watch as a kid. Like DuckTales, Treasure of the Lost Lamp, Brave Little Toaster, or even The Never-Ending Story and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These are productions that gave the intended audience what they wanted. Something with a bigger story, something unique, something we haven't seen these characters as we have before. And I get there's a lot at stake on fulfilling the fan base expectation, especially when it comes to 5 to 7-year-olds that really enjoyed the Dogman books. And even though I get it, I get the intent, I get the idea of trying to keep the attention and trying to keep the appeal to the fan base, even though our Country Bears director and Animaniacs writer Pete Hastings, he tries to emulate the comic book feel without adding comic book white line transitions. He makes it so hyperactive that if you left the theater to go to the restroom, you might not know what in the hell is going on when you come back. Now, I can see what Hastings is trying to do. I get the intent. I get the attention span of kids now. This is a style that Hastings, I can tell, is taking into consideration when making a movie like this, is making a known book and a fan base, and how animated movies need to keep the attention span. But also, I ask myself the question, does that mean Hollywood should bend to this attention span or do the right thing and make a movie that can still honor the material and fan base, but slow it down to make them appreciate it? Do we have to have these hyperactive movies that just appeal to the audience, but rather have the audience just really appreciate the characters, appreciate the messaging, and appreciate the material? Just because we are in the state of mind where it's inevitable that our technology is ensuring our youth have short short attention spans doesn't mean our movies should. This is a moral question that gets shoved into trash cans in Hollywood in this day and age. As movies are carefully selected as theaters see down traffic, animation is still an art that has evolved into a formula of mind-numbing entertainment for kids. And as I've said it before, generic entertainment that doesn't give enough to help our youth grow into adulthood with anything memorable to appreciate in adulthood other than fart jokes or generational jokes that will be too old by the time our youth get old enough to understand them. But I will say this on where I'm on the fence when it comes to Dogman is in its underlying hard messaging to today's youth and adults. The messaging of Dogman is absolutely current with how society is today. The underlying problems of today. We have topics of families with parents neglecting kids, putting screens in front of them, distractions, making their lives easier instead of growing our kids. We have topics of death, and we have topics of how we are raised defining us, abandonment, feeling no worth, and the problems of the world at top discussion that can create a positive or negative environment for kids, defined on how the parents translate it. These are messaging that are summed up during the last half hour of the movie. This is messaging that is very complicated and deep that are summed up during the last half of the movie that made me question if this is for kids or adults, or even both. There is a scene that I really did appreciate and it made me as an adult reflect, is where we have our villain Petey the Cat, voiced by Pete Davidson, and his cloned little son Petey, voiced by Lucas Hopkins Cauldron, as they're walking in the park at night, where little Petey is talking about the positive aspects like stars, flowers, puddles, and Petey has to correct them in a negative way, such as, those flowers aren't flowers, they're weeds, and the puddles aren't puddles, they're just mud. The messaging of how we present our way of thinking to kids is a direct reflection to how our kids confront situations growing up. This isn't something new, but it's a clever piece of messaging and reminder for adults that Dogman puts into its film. In a way, this is a subtle, almost camouflage way of messaging more for adults than there are kids, on how we communicate with our kids on current events, or how we just bury the stresses of life so our kids don't have to experience it. Dogman also has some jokes that adults will pick up, but more importantly does something that a lot of animated films don't. Because the more adult the joke is, the film puts in an animation to actually support it for kids to be entertained by it. In a way, if it wasn't for the randomness and sporadicness of the first half of the movie, Dogman kind of presents a Bluey situation, a Bluey strategy, where it presents more of a messaging for adults than it is kids, but it does act as an entertainment value for kids while the parents learn along. And for that, I can respect this film on its intent at messaging for both kids and adults. We are also in a world that parents can get swept up in stresses of the world and forget that kids are listening to every single thing we say and what we do. Dogman, even though you have to fight through an hour of pure just randomness and sporadicness, it does have a message for the adults to slow down and appreciate the kids in your life and pay attention to the words and the actions that we say. This is a movie that speaks both to youth and adult, even if the animation doesn't speak to all generations. The first half is to gain attention from the kids. The second half is to speak directly to adults. To the point, this would have been a mere perfect family movie if our writer-director Pete Hastings would have slowed down and not put all of his eggs in one basket when it comes to messaging during the last 30 minutes. If I could just watch the last 30 minutes in messaging and ignore the rest, this is a movie in its day and age that would get 4 stars in terms of a universal message for families. But unfortunately, we have to sit for an hour to get there. And again, our kids might be entertained during the first half of the movie, and that might be the intent, is the first half for kids and the last half hour for adults. Now, I just don't want to destroy the first half because it is random, sporadic, and hyper speed, but it does have some funny moments that are cute and funny as long as we don't blink. The origin story of Dogman, we spend very little time between our officer owner and his dog. And that kind of is, if you're not a fan of the book or the storyline, is a big disappointment. There isn't much emotional stake here, especially if we are to support the message of loss that we get in the final act. There's a bigger movie here to be had in terms of consistent messaging, and holistically could have been a better movie if we had proper balance of storytelling and build from an emotional element with consistency. Dogman did get a couple chuckles out of me when it comes to the subtle humor that is innocent enough for all ages without inserting generational jokes. And honestly, I was anticipating a fart joke for this movie, and that would have absolutely ruined it. But I'm proud to say that the movie only had one fart joke, and that was from a house that came to life. That was very subtle and it went very quick, so you gotta put the fart joke in, I get it, whatever. But at least it was subtle and it was forgettable. So one fart joke with proper messaging is what really put me over the edge on this one. Dogman is an innocent enough film that without its brave messaging of current times would have been a complete disaster. The animation is annoying and hyperactive, but by the time the credits rolled, it summed up its intent nicely for kids and adults. The first half was to get the kids' attention. The last half is a reminder to adults, and that is something very special when it comes to animated storytelling. The movie builds to messaging that as an adult, what we say does matter to kids. How we love our kids matters. How we love each other matters. And for kids, doing the right thing is important, and with all the troubles in the world, no matter what adults say, shouldn't stop us from seeing the world in a positive light, and to remind us about positivity and how that translates to others. And being okay with just being a kid, no matter what anybody says. I'm giving Dogman as a marginal recommendation based on the kid appeal, the intent, and the messaging, whether it's a kid or adult. I'm giving Dogman 3 stars. Divine G, imprisoned at Sing Sing for a crime he didn't commit, finds purpose by acting in a theater group alongside other incarcerated men in the story of resilience, humanity, and the transformative power of the art in the 3-time Oscar nominee is Sing Sing.
To die, to sleep, to dream.
This is a clemency hearing for your conviction, 25 to life. Since you've been in custody, you've been involved in a theater program.
Gentlemen, let's go.
It's been a program that was established to help people get more in touch with their feelings and truly get some rehabilitation.
I am Gladiator Goliath. I am Spartacus.
I'm Prince Hamlet of Denmark.
And it's turned into something of, I don't know, wonderful.
What part do you play?
From time to time I do act, like we all do.
So are you acting at all during this interview?
We're here to become human again and enjoy the things that is not in our reality.
I think you guys are becoming real with each other, vulnerable.
Listen, I already know what you're doing, know who you are, what you about, bro. What? You don't get to tell me what I need in prison. You don't get to do that. And don't bring me in those dark corners no more.
The world expects brothers like you and I to walk in with our heads held down. Nah, what you gotta walk in like a king. Everything is yours.
I'm divine now.
Yeah.
This is my theater.
Now give him some love, give him some love.
Go to your most perfect spot. Do you hear anything? Are you with somebody? Are you outside? Hold that feeling.
You gotta admit that I murdered that Hamlet, bro. Shakespeare is in his grave right now. He rolled over.
You did your thing, beloved.
For decades, we have seen, shared, and implemented ideas and opinions to our criminal justice system on how we should be treating prisoners. Some have strong opinions of just lock them up and throw away the keys. Some want to see rehabilitation. Some don't want to just see prisoners slapped in a cell with the think about what you did mentality. There is justification to consider new and innovative ways in our jail system, since 68% of prisoners after release return back to jail within 3 years, and 77% within 5 years. The numbers justify teaching something new in prisons. And some may disagree, and those that have been a victim of crime might be a little bit biased on how criminals are treated. And that's fine and understandable. But the one thing that Sing Sing does bring to light is there a better way to give hope, to give community, and to give something fresh, to give a criminal or an inmate purpose for when they leave a prison? More importantly, are we giving them the guidebook to give them a sense of hope or the sense of doing good after they release from prison? Sing Sing is based on a true story about the RTA program, Rehabilitation Through the Arts, at the New York Sing Sing Correctional Facility, including a participant in the program, John Adrian Veliquez, who also plays in the movie as himself, who was wrongfully imprisoned after 24 years. This gained a lot of media attention and an apology from President Biden. Here the movie stars Coleman Domingo, who plays John Whitfield, a heavy participant in the RTA program. Whitfield gives hints of his wrongful imprisonment and the broken justice system that Whitfield seems to can't beat to prove his innocence. This is where Sing Sing praises the topic of hope within the RTA program, where we take a handful of prisoners from all different creeds and crimes and put them together in a program that art has the magic to do, which is bring people together and create community. But more importantly, have theater and art bring out an inner confidence to want to discover hope. Sing Sing isn't a perfect movie, but it is a great movie when it comes to bringing up topics, a thesis, a demonstration, and the power of arts up front and center. But where it stops itself from being a perfect movie is that it does a great job on the topic and introducing such great characters and performances on screen. It almost shoots itself in the foot, where I wanted to spend more time and get some real depth to all these characters that are imprisoned. The realization that I really did want to get to know these characters, this feeling came to light in a particular scene and another example of the limited time we get with our inmates, when we have a powerful scene between Coleman Domingo as Whitfield and Sean San Jose as Mike, where our director Greg Queter sets the scene up as a pure open reflection on oneself and who they are and how they got there. The scene leads to something deeply emotional and thought-provoking. It's one of the best scenes of the film, but this is also where I wanted more. I wanted more from the thought process of these inmates, especially from Clarence Macklin, who is the character that is to prove what the arts program can do and how it can impact life. Macklin grows to who he thought would only be a criminal and a gang member, and that's what his destiny was, but then he finds community that support him bringing out his full potential and his confidence. We have seen this premise before, but here's where it's done differently with believable growth in a character. What really stands out is how authentic these characters and this movie is. And that's because they have real actors that experience the RTA program, really live in this movie. The movie is populated by a mix of professional actors and formerly incarcerated individuals that participated in the real-life RTA program. And the result is a level of authenticity that's rare in cinema. Clarence Macklin, who plays a new recruit to the program, is a revolution, and it is a success story, and it actually goes further that arts in prisons are necessary to find one's confidence, to find one's passion. Macklin's raw, unfiltered performance captures the fear, the anger, and the tentative hope of a man learning to trust again. Similarity, Sean San Jose, as the program's director, brings a quiet authority and compassion to his role, serving as a bridge between the world inside prison and the world outside, or the hope to want to be outside, the hope to be better. And again, I'll say, Macklin is a true success story, not just because he gives an absolutely mesmerizing performance, an authentic performance, because he spent 17 years for armed robbery at Sing Sing prison and took part in the RTA program, and when he was released, he took part in a community art programs and now gives one of the most memorable performances of 2024. But that's not to outshine Coleman Domingo, who's also phenomenal here. But when it comes to Macklin, it is an absolute shame that we didn't see Macklin pop up during awards time. It's a phenomenal performance and a genuine performance that we see his growth from point A to point Z. We see the lack of confidence in a believable aspect, and we see the growth of his performance go into what we see as a man for him today. It's hard to pick out a bad performance from this movie. It's packed full of great performances, which led me to really yearn for the need of more from these characters, more substance, to learn more about their background, to prove the point of community. During rehearsals led by a director and another fantastic performance, Brent Buell, played by Paul Rossi, we feel situational intent to symbolize community. But when rehearsals are off and we are left with the individual characters, there's a missing layer of depth that the film never truly explores. And I completely get it. I get that it can be a challenging feat to satisfy with so many characters in play. I can see the challenge that writers John Richardson and Clint Bentley try to give the incredible true story justice. So even though I can see the challenges, at the end of the day, it's about the effectiveness of storytelling. The message is executed. It makes us feel good. It makes us give hope. But what's missing is the final exclamation mark on the impact to encourage change. The movie, we can tell, wants to send a message, but by the end of it, we don't get that exclamation mark to really encourage it. But I will give the movie credit. It does encourage further research. We are encouraged to research these different characters. Sing Sing is one of those rare movies that will encourage you to research the story behind these men and the program. It's a movie that really does show these individuals that made a mistake in their lives as humans that do want to do better, but we have that question mark of how can they be better? And they're told they can't be better. It shines a little bit of humility upon these characters locked up and the frustration of the legal system when our legal system doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Sing Sing is an eye-opening experience that will bring all the emotions to our prisoners instead of just judgment. I'm giving Sing Sing 3.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And please don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you haven't yet checked out the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and the Movie Wire's crossover show, Back to the Balcony, make sure you do. Again, the link of that show will be in the description of this episode. Until next week, do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.
The credits roll. We say farewell. Join us next time. We'll have more tales to tell.